Welcome. Thank you for everyone coming on this rainy, very busy Wednesday. My name is Katie Matthews. On behalf of Alexandria PTA Council, I'm pleased to welcome you all to our first annual Alexandria City Public Schools Safety Forum. We are very grateful for the support of ACPS for this event and their commitment to making sure our children's safety and security comes first. We are also excited to collaborate with Parents of Safe Alexandria Schools, a group formed by 4 parents of ACPS students with the mission to prevent gun violence in our schools and community. Information on joining PSA, along with other parent resources brought by our speakers, are available on tables outside of the auditorium. For every FYI, there will be a national score update once 8 o'clock starts around. I've also brought a baby shark just for some good luck. Go Nats. Tonight we have an impressive panel of speakers. We will be holding a question and answer session at the end. So we ask you write down any questions you may have on the index cards that were out front. And then we'll be collecting them throughout the evening if you just kind of hold them up, or I'll kind of keep my eye out for them. I would like to welcome a couple of members of the school board. I saw Michelle Reef and Heather Thornton. You want to wave? There we go. Did I miss anything? Okay. I am honored to introduce our first speaker of the evening, Dr. Gregory Hutchins. Since becoming the superintendent of ACPS in last June, Dr. Hutchins has proven that providing a safe and secure learning environment for all students and staff is his top priority. From working with parents to improving the violent intruder training program, to partnering with PTAC and Parents for Safe Alexandria Schools to host this inaugural safety forum, we are grateful for his support and for the encouragement he has given to stay involved in the educational process, especially those areas that involve the physical and mental well-being of our children. Welcome, Dr. Hutchins.
All right, good evening, everybody. So first and foremost, I want to say that this is just a wonderful time for us to be able to come together on behalf of our young people. Because when we talk about safety, it's unfortunate that we have to have discussions like this when we're talking about safety, but this is our reality now. And one thing that really stood out to me when I had the conversation with PSAs at our first meeting, when you all were pitching, Dr. Hutchins, we need to have some type of forum where we're bringing our community together and we're talking about gun violence and we're talking about gun prevention in our community and also in our schools. And are you going to be able to support that? And then I said, yes. And you all were like, huh? Is that easy? Yes, of course. I am going to support that because we have to make sure that we're providing as safe as a learning environment for our kids as possible. And there's nothing that's 100 proof. In this country. If we had anything that was, everyone would have it. But we can do everything within our power to ensure that our learning environment is safe for every single one of our kids who come to Alexandria City Public Schools. And that is not something that we're going to be able to do by ourselves. And we're very fortunate to be able to partner with PSAs and to partner with our Parent-Teacher Association and PTAC and our school division and our Alexandria Police Department. To ensure that we are taking the appropriate measures to provide this safe learning environment for our kids. So I want to say hats off to PSA because without the drive and the dedication and the passion that you all had before we even had this forum, right, for having this vision, I want to commend you for being able to be relentless about it and unapologetic about the push that you all gave me, I know for sure, to make this come to fruition. Because our young people are counting on us. And as a parent with our 2 children, they are in Alexandria City Public Schools. I want to make sure that every day that I say, have a great day to my kids, and I hope that you have a nice time in school and do your best. My goal is that they come home. And I know that every other parent is saying the same thing. And I think in today's state, right, where we are, it's unfortunate that some young people who said, "Have a great day, and I'll see you when I come home," didn't make it back home. That's real. And this is not a scare tactic, right? It took for me to know the superintendent who was superintendent at Sandy Hook Elementary School. She's one of my colleagues, Janet. And being able to sit down, and she finally talks about that situation. This summer was her first time speaking publicly to our superintendent cohort. So we're part of the National Superintendent's Roundtable. This was the first time she was able to finally speak about that event that happened in her school division. And it really resonated with me to say, as a superintendent, it is my responsibility, it is my job to ensure that we're partnering with whoever we can to provide a safe environment for our kids. And no one thought that would happen in their school division. No one ever thought that that would be something that would be the headline of a story for this country, but it happened. So let us continue to have an open mind. You know, we all have our personal views about what we need to do to protect our young people in our schools, and we have our personal opinions about everything, and it's important for us to be open-minded about everybody's opinions and everybody's views. But what I ask for us all to do, regardless of your opinion, regardless of your viewpoint, to remember that it is our job to make sure we provide a safe environment for our kids by any means necessary, right, every single day. So enjoy this evening. I'm looking forward to the Q&A this afternoon, or this evening. It's not afternoon anymore, it's dark outside, everybody. But I am looking forward to learning, you know, from the presenters today, and I'm looking forward to interacting and communicating with you all at the end of this program. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. I want to thank you for coming to our first inaugural safety fair. I feel like the forces have kind of conspired against us tonight. With the rain, the Nats game, I am going to be taking attendance at 8:10, see who's still here. And I do promise to give you a score update as the evening progresses. I just want to also thank ACPS and our community members, everyone who's come together to put this evening on tonight. I have just been so impressed. Anyone I asked if they could help, the answer was emphatically yes. So I think that says a lot about our community and about the importance that we have, that we give for the mission of keeping our kids safe. So I'm gonna be introducing our speakers throughout the evening. So sorry, you'll probably get a little sick of me. Our first speaker is Jamie Bartlett. He's the Director of Alexandria City Public Schools Security and Safety Services, and he's going to talk about the ALICE program and a few other things that I think you'll find interesting. Come on up.
Good evening. I want to thank PSAs for putting on this safety forum. There's at least 4 ladies here that are integral core of PSAs. You all want to stand up and be recognized? I'm going to touch a little bit on partnerships with them, but I'm not going to talk a lot about their stuff because they can do it so much better than I can. So I'm going to, whoops, that's not good. Okay. I'm going to do a PowerPoint. I'm sorry, but that's easier for everybody to know. This is just kind of an overview of our organization, how we fall in the scheme of things at ACPS and the different people that are involved in the organization. I have 2 of my folks here tonight, John Contreras, who's the coordinator of safety, of security and emergency management, and Don Daly, who's the security services supervisor. And I'd be remiss, I won't call you out or ask you to stand up, but there's a lady in the audience who was very, very instrumental in bringing Alice to Alexandria Public Schools, who served as a coordinator of security and emergency management in the past. So thank you. I want to talk for a minute about operational security. These are all the things that we get to before we get to anything to do with ALICE or violent intruder stuff. We hope to stop it before it ever gets there, right? If it gets to the point where somebody's inside a school trying to harm somebody, then we've failed in our mission. So that's what I want to talk about first. We have school security officers. We have many school security officers that are deployed primarily in our middle and high schools, but a few in other places as well. In addition to them, we have school resource officers. I'm just going to skip over that because we've got the chief of police here tonight, and he can talk to it much better than I can. In most of our schools, we have secure vestibules. These are areas where visitors are allowed into the vestibule. It's locked then on both sides, and staff inside the school can take a better look at them before they let them into the school, where they then touch our visitor management system. Everybody has to sign in through a visitor management system. If you're an ACPS parent, you know a lot about our visitor management system because you sign into it all the time. You get a little yellow tag that you put on, and that tells us that you're okay to be in our school. All right, the sex offender registry check, that's what the visitor management system does. It runs a quick sex offender registry check just to make sure, and then folks are allowed in the schools. For employees, we do background checks that involve fingerprints and state police NCIC checks, and we look at them very closely. We also require our employees to wear ID badges. All our employees should have ID badges on tonight. All mine do, I know that. So that's another way that we can tell who's supposed to be there and who isn't supposed to be there. In addition to that, we've got a pretty robust CCTV system deployed throughout ACPS that we're continually trying to modernize and bring up to date. There's a lot of cameras, probably 600 or 700 cameras throughout the whole system. We also are working on electronic door access. I've got a little star next to that because we don't have that in every school yet, but all of our new schools, in every school that we are refurbishing, we put electronic door access in, which tells us who's coming in, when they're coming in, and when a door is left open. That's a very important thing for a school. We've got a lot of resources that we rely on outside of my office. We've got an anonymous tip line that's reached through the app, through the ACPS app, which is available on our website. Anybody can download it. Hopefully everybody has downloaded it. We have bullying prevention programs in our schools. We have student support teams. Student support teams are the administrative teams in the schools. Principals, assistant principals, social workers, school psychologists, nurses, folks that support the kids in the schools. We have positive behavior interventional systems. We have counselors, psychologists, school-based social workers. We run mentoring programs and extracurricular activities, which keeps the kids busy, keeps them engaged, and gives us an opportunity to build relationships with them so that hopefully we hear about anything bad that's going to happen before it happens. Law enforcement partnerships, we've got an MOU with the Alexandria Police Department, which guides our actions when we're interacting with the SROs and their actions when they're interacting with school people. We have 5 SROs assigned to the school division, again deployed 2 at TC, 1 at this school, and 1 each at the middle schools, and we have a dedicated supervisor with that. They also, Alexandria Police also provides enhanced staffing in the way of an off-duty detail officer at TC and staffing for athletics, extracurricular type activities. We have elementary school liaisons who come out to the elementary schools and just come and have lunch with the kids, read to them, talk to them, and build relationships with them. And that extends across the police department, the sheriff's department, the fire department. Everybody works to build relationships with kids from early ages. Okay, that's the part where I'm going to touch on PSAs, but I'm going to let PSAs speak for themselves. We also do a lot of PTA presentations, particularly this time of year. We're talking PTAs. Threat assessment. This is mandated in the state of Virginia. Okay, every division has to have threat assessment teams. We're fortunate here in Alexandria. We have a school-based team in every school, and we have a division-based team to oversee all that. What is a threat assessment team? It's comprised of, again, your student support teams, your principals, your assistant principals, your social workers, psychologists, nurses, all the folks who have anything to do with kids. They come together to assess potential threats, exactly what it says, right? This helps us with the duty of care for your children, and it also enables us to balance safety with confidentiality when we look at threats that not only kids may present, but outside folks may present threats as well to our school system. They recommend intervention services, whether that be counseling or whatever it may be, and then conduct periodic follow-ups to make sure that things are okay with that particular person. Here's where we start to talk about lockdown. Okay, traditional lockdown. Everybody understands what traditional lockdown is, right? That's where you lock the doors, you turn off the lights, you cover the glass, and you wait for somebody to come get you. You wait for help to come to you. Okay. In 2013, the Department of Education decided that was not a strategy. That was not a viable strategy to use. And so things began to change, right? That's where we come into ALICE. We looked at programs around, we settled on ALICE. It's got its good points, it's got some points, but overall it's a good program. ALICE is just an acronym. It stands for Alert, Lockdown, Inform, Counter, which is distraction, and Evacuate. And really that's kind of backwards because we want people to evacuate. That's our main purpose with ALICE. ALICE provides situational-based options for active threats. That's what was recommended by the Department of Education. That's what we do. ALICE allows individuals to participate in their own survival. No one can guarantee success in any situation, right? But this set of skills may increase chances of survival in the case of an active threat. That's why we use it. All staff members initially receive an online training course, then they receive 4 hours of practical training, which myself and my colleagues provide for them. And then they receive annual refreshers online after that. All new staff members are trained in this in ACPS. Students receive lessons. They primarily receive these lessons in September. We're mandated by the state to do 4 drills in September. The first 10 days, the second 10 days. Each period, we're required to do a fire drill, we're required to do a lockdown drill. So we have to do that, and by the time that is over, all these lessons have been exhausted by the end of September. That's when we do about 50% of our drills. This is just a listing of the different lessons that we have in here. I know it's a little hard to see up there, but it breaks it down: first 10 days of school, second 10 days of school, which lesson comes when, and those packets of lessons have been handed out at PTA meetings. It will be available on our website just as soon as we can get them up there. Put those up there so anybody can go look at them any time of the year. Sorry. Okay. These are state-mandated emergency drills. We do 11 fire drills, which count summer school as a fire drill. We do 4 violent intruder drills, ALICE drills, 2 evacuation, 2 barricade ones. We do 2 school bus evacuation drills. In addition to that, we do a tornado drill, and I've got a star next to the earthquake drill because it's not mandated by state code, but we do it because it does happen. How you can help with prevention: that's to sign in through our visitor management system every time you come to a school. Wear your badge. Make sure it's visible all the time because it tells us that you belong in the school. Okay? Inform staff if you see anything unusual. You see somebody hanging around outside. You see kids doing something they shouldn't be doing. Say something. See something, say something. Talk to your child. And again, same thing. See something, say something. And these are just this is a list of how to get a hold of us if you need anything. That's all I've got. Thank you.
Thank you, Jamie. Just as a reminder, if you have questions, write them down on the index cards, and we will have a Q&A at the end of all of the presentations. Next up is Susan Kately, who's well known in the city of Alexandria. All the bios for our speakers are in the back. Susan's going to be talking, providing an overview of the Be Smart program, which encompasses safe gun storage.
Good evening, everybody. As Maureen said, my name is Susan Kately. I'm an early childhood advocate and specialist, and have volunteered giving the Be Smart presentations for probably the last 3 years. And I'm really honored to be with everybody here who is focused on keeping our children and our community safe, and that's amazing because there are a lot of distractions right now. We do have rain. I thought if this was November, we'd all be like, oh, it's gonna snow. You can't be out. So I'm glad that the rain is occurring in October, and we all know that it's safe. It's at 70 degrees and the World Series. So as we keep doing this. But I do wanna share that our Be Smart, we're going to talk about being in the home and how it is an adult responsibility to limit a child's access to firearms, which I think we can all agree. We want our children to be healthy and happy and safe and live in a really safe community. And I have the research and I can tell you that we do live in a very safe community. And we just want to continue these steps to make sure that we're all working together to do so. Just checking my notes here. Oh, good. Great, so this is the Be Smart. This is a Be Smart, it's a conversation about guns, kids' guns and safety. Sorry, I don't usually talk to this many people. And I'm looking at my notes because I got a little distracted by you guys. Okie doke, so we did start, and you'll see there, full disclosure, this has been started by Moms Demand Action in conjunction with the National Sports Shooting Foundations. You'll see their reference later on, to really come together to understand what are best practices about keeping children safe around firearms, and what is the safest method when you're using a firearm in general. So this is not about not talking about guns and firearms. It really is about addressing our own personal responsibility to our own children and also our community members. So what can we do? Whoops, I went too fast. Oh my stars. So I usually talk to 4-year-olds, so I have to tell you this. And you guys are highly attentive and nobody is like spitting. So this is very exciting to me. So we've developed this Be Smart framework to help parents and adults protect children from gun violence with simple, easy to remember behaviors. I can attest to this because I am also a gun-owning person in the city of Alexandria, which always shocks people because for some reason we think nobody owns a gun in Alexandria. I'm like, what? Okay. There's plenty of us. And it's about, again, keeping a home safe and keeping our community safe. These are very simple things, and we can all be very responsible gun owners if you choose to own a gun. So let's talk about what it takes to be smart. We're going to secure firearms. Securing guns is the single most important thing we can do as individuals to reduce the types of gun deaths we're discussing today. And we want to remember that you can never rely on curious children to keep themselves safe. We now have the research to show that that wonderful frontal lobe that those of us who have middle schoolers and 20-year-olds know is not forming quickly enough. It is certainly not going. The brain is not developed to make those decisions. And so as adults, we're going to protect our children because if they were put in a certain situation, they might not make the right decision. They just don't know how to do it just yet. Certainly at ages 2 to 4, which is where many accidents occur during that age. So we're going to keep guns locked, unloaded, and stored separately from ammunition. As you can see, we've got responsible storage, the biometric safes. When I started this just 3 years ago, biometric safes were very expensive. It was like, woo. I think we decided now they're like $25 on Amazon. A firearm is an investment. We don't take it lightly because we own one and I know how much it costs. So you to spend a certain amount of that money to provide proper storage as well. Again, those biometric safes, only the little fingerprints. I don't even know because they're not my fingerprints that can open it. Storing something in a drawer is not responsible storage. Storing things in a bedroom and I've locked the door, that's not responsible storage. We want to make sure that we're keeping the children safe. So 70% of children under 10 know where their parents store their guns. They know where the Christmas presents are hidden. All of your children know the Wi-Fi password better than you do. They know how to work your iPhone. They know where everything is. So again, it is our job. We are the responsible adults in this situation. We're going to model that appropriate behavior, especially around guns. So this is where we worked with the Sports Shooting Foundation, this slide and a couple of others. It is my choice as an American person living here, and that every law-abiding adult, that I can make that decision whether or not to have a gun in the home. And a part of that decision includes asking yourself these questions, and this, as I said, comes from the National Sports Shooting Foundation. Will other adults join in firearm training? Do risk factors exist? We'll look at those in a second. Do all adults in the home support having a gun? And what precautions will you take to safeguard children? Again, this is an investment, this is a choice, and we need to make sure that everybody's thinking about the correct things. My son and my husband go to the shooting range a couple times a year. In fact, my 16-year-old was very excited and asked for that as his 16th birthday, to go to the range. And I don't mind that because they're going to treat it with respect. There will be no drinking around, certainly for the 16-year-old, but there are no adults drinking while handling a gun. That's not responsible. They were at a range, and he was trained and taught how to respect this very powerful thing. So again, I want you to know that I own and respect firearms, but I also want to be a responsible firearm owner. So thinking of all these different questions, we can look at those and some more. We want to make sure that we are adhering to safe policy and safe handling when we're using a firearm. So if you don't have one, you can just read and learn. So you always want to keep your gun pointed in a safe direction. And certainly our chief of police can give us even more, luckily we have lots of police here, could give us even more information. Treat every single firearm as if it is loaded. Be sure of what your target is and what is beyond it, keeping your finger off the trigger until it is ready to fire. And don't rely on your gun safety. There's so many statistics about families going out hunting. There was one specifically in 2017, and the young cousin, they were all at a shooting event, and the young cousin shot his other cousin because he didn't know he was beyond that firing point, that target of whatever he was shooting. So now that family has been crushed because the child has died, the cousin, probably a teenager, but also the child who took his cousin's life. I mean, it gives me shivers, and I've told that story a million times. We just want to make sure that people are following the rules for all these different things. Now, when we think about, we want to store a firearm appropriately for our younger children, what about these older kids? I have a 13-year-old and a 16-year-old, but even those 10-year-olds that are going off to other people's houses, what can we tell them? And a simple guideline that I say, that I share with others, if you find a gun in a house or anywhere else, don't ever touch it or allow your friends or anyone else to touch it. Leave right away and tell a responsible adult. That's the only time that a child should make a decision about this. There should never be another opportunity that they come across, that they happen to find a firearm, a loaded one, an unloaded one. I don't care. I have no tolerance for that. Excuse me, I was getting my opinion in there. But so I will share that with those children. If my son, who I know is well trained, if he sees a gun at his friend's house, I'm like, oh no, you need to haul your buns right out of there. You leave and you text me and you call me and I'm coming to get you. Because I don't know what that young fellow's doing, okay? I don't know their policies. But if we all can start taking responsibility for this, we can create that safe community. $1.7 million children live in homes with guns that are both loaded and unlocked. We don't know where all the guns are in Alexandria. And Chief Brown has not come to me to say, can you help me find them, Susan? No, not my business. But what we can do, we can start asking people about how they store their guns in their home. This happens around Thanksgiving, when you go see those wonderful aunties and uncles who don't have kids in their house ever. But that's the important time to go. And I will make it a reasonably fun conversation, although it is always pretty awkward. And I'll say, hey, my kid's super curious. I know you have that wonderful gun collection. How's that stored? Could you let me know? And I know families who have said, oh, yeah, it's just in the bedroom. They don't go in there. We won't let the kids in the bedroom. Nope, sorry. And they have stopped going to that house. They said, okay, we won't be able to spend the night, certainly, and we won't be there at all because of that risk to their children. So what I do want you to do, this is a big crowd and some of you are just solitary right now, but it is a hard question to say, hi, how you doing? Or you can pretend to text. You know, this is how, as a non-millennial, I text. Hey, we're coming over for a play date, or my son's coming over to spend the night, or go trick-or-treating, and maybe a little unsupervised. I didn't say it. But they might just happen to be out there as teens. How do you store your firearms? Or I could say, as a responsible gun owner, hi, Mary. Your kids are coming over, and I just wanted to let you know I'm a responsible gun owner, and my gun is kept in a gun safe, and the ammunition is separate. How about you? Now, honestly, Mary was like, when she found out I had a gun, she was like, Susan, I don't think my kids can ever come over. And I was like, that's your choice, Mary. But there's more people than you know. that are very responsible gun owners. So I do want you to just, like in 2 seconds, you're gonna turn to somebody who's next to you, even you two, even camera guy, to say, hi, how are you? How do you store your guns? Go ahead, ready, go. Okay, you guys are so good at this. Now I feel more like I have 4-year-olds. Okay, bring it back home. Stop asking. All right, excellent work. Now, no one in this room can ever say, I don't know how to ask somebody if they have firearms in their home, because everyone has done it just this one time, okay? And if you were nervous or you're sitting by yourself, come up later and ask me. Again, I talk about this stuff all the time. But what we want to do when we're talking about it and we're building that understanding, we're going to make it part of a discussion. My child has allergies. My child has celiacs. We're not going to have the gluten. My child's afraid of big dogs. Hey, and how do you store your firearms? My children are so curious. Using technology. Text, hello, it's the greatest thing. It's the world's most passive-aggressive communicator in the entire world. I love it. And again, I volunteer that information in my home. But talking to family and caregivers. There was a caregiver in Orange County, and it was a couple of years back, but the child, one of the children that they took care of, found a loaded weapon and died because of it. And so we just always want to make sure, even the people you don't think, many people look at me and go, oh, whatever they think. They don't think I own a gun. And so we just want to start asking those questions if your children are heading into their house and if their children are heading into your house. And especially around our middle school ages, we have less control of our children, even if you want to tell me you do. And we do need to say, let's talk more about this and letting our children know, but also talking to all the parents. All right. And one of our last pieces, I'll just let you do that there. Recognizing the risk of teen suicide, but I believe this should be extended to just suicide in general. Suicide is on the rise all over our country, within every age group. I don't know the answer for that, but what I know is responsible gun storage is very important. We need to make sure that our children, maybe someone who is feeling low, just having access to a firearm increases that ability to take one's own life. And I didn't even say that correctly. There's a new way to say it. But anyway, we want to make sure that everyone is given that opportunity to have a better day each and every day. Again, we are the responsible adults, and we will take care of that. So recognizing the risks of, again, all suicide, all of those challenges, we're going to, different pages on. We want to look for that change in mood or behavior. Is someone becoming very angry? We want to look into that, because sometimes I've seen depression and it becomes very aggressive, and the depression is not pleasant to chat with, as opposed to a very sad person. Sometimes we think, oh, they're just sad if you're depressed. No, some of those nice angry people we know are depressed, and that's a sign, that's that change that we want to maybe not address it with them right away, but just say, hey, how you doing? I love you. And let's see if we can get you some help. Also feeling hopeless, ashamed, or desperate. Also certainly talking about wanting to kill themselves or saying you'd be better off. And there's that increase in aggression, which just always stands out to me because I never expected it. And so in my extended family, we had someone who really struggled with depression as a young person, and he was hospitalized. And it was that aggression that was really so hard to get over, to say, I have to challenge you, but I'm going to do it for your own good. But it just looked so different, and so I always mention that because it was a surprise to me. And then our last slide, tell your peers to be smart. We're going to talk to our friends and family, just asking that question. Hey, how do you store your firearms? That is opening up a whole discussion point. We are changing this information. We didn't talk about this in years past. What we want to do is start talking about how people are storing their firearms. When I do these sessions, I meet more responsible gun owners than I ever thought I would meet. So it's really wonderful. So the more I do this, the more wonderful stories I have about people that I'm just chatting with. They're like, of course you lock your gun up. Somebody might steal it. You don't want to do that. It's so expensive. And so we want to make sure that we're all working together, keep our homes, keep our community as safe as possible, because this is not just a job for the police. This is not just a job for our schools. This is a job about keeping us all safe and taking that responsibility on our own. Thank you so much for letting me talk to you.
Thank you, Susan, for helping us destigmatize this very important conversation we should be having. We can't talk about gun violence and school safety without also addressing the mental health implications. Next is Fiza Jackson, who's a mental health specialist with Alexandria City Public Schools.
So good evening. It's good to see everybody, and I just want to start by echoing what previous speakers have said, just being thankful for the coordination of this event and the opportunity to talk to everybody about student and child safety. When we talk about physical safety, I think that the other piece of this is emotional safety, which goes hand in hand. And so I want to take the next few minutes to really talk about what do our mental health and social emotional supports look like at ACPS, and then also talk about what can conversations look like at home with you and your family. So in the Department of Student Services, Alternative Programs, and Equity, one of our main focuses aligned with the ACPS strategic plan is health and wellness of our students. And so what we really want to do is work in partnership with schools to promote social emotional wellness. And when we think about exposure to violence, we think about violence prevention and intervention, then we also want to think about how are we caring for our young people and how are we making them feel connected in our schools and in our community. So I want to start just by reviewing some best practice guidelines that were put out by the National Association of School Psychologists in 2015. And what they did was they put out some literature talking about what are the considerations for schools when they are engaging in active shooter or armed assailant drills, similar to the ALICE protocol that we use. And one of the things that I wanted to highlight is that they talk about how it's critical that administrators, school-employed mental health professionals, school resource and police officers, and safety and crisis team members all work together in creating what this system looks like. And the reason that I thought that that was an important point is because that's exactly what we do at ACPS. And so we have a division level safety team that we heard about a few minutes ago, and each school has a safety team previously known as the crisis team. And everybody on that team comes with different expertise geared towards keeping our students safe. And so we're talking about counseling, instruction, school administration, law enforcement, and then other areas as appropriate. Our safety teams always include a qualified school professional who can complete suicide risk assessments and threat assessments. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more. And then collaboration also occurs with city agencies as appropriate, such as the police department, CPS, and emergency mental health services. So what's a qualified school professional? It is a psychologist, social worker, nurse, or a counselor. Qualified mental health professionals that have been trained to do suicide risk assessments, to do threat assessments, and to build the social emotional wellness across students in our schools. And I think what's really fantastic about the way that our schools are structured is that we have a psychologist, social worker, and a nurse at every school, and one or more counselors. So we have a full student support team that's in place in our buildings every day supporting the needs of our students. And then in addition to that, at central office within our department, we have leads for each one of these areas that can also be consulted if a situation comes up. And we partner with community mental health agencies to ensure that we're all in partnership in making sure that our students are safe. So what does this actually look like? We know when we think about intervention that the best way that we can intervene is to engage in prevention. And so according to our multi-tiered system of supports, we have that in place for mental health supports for our students. So when we're looking at Tier 1, we're thinking about what are the universal ways that we prevent and educate. So putting in place programs such as Say Something, which we've done at the middle school and high school level. Start with Hello Week is something that we've considered and are looking at how it links with our practices around restorative practices and PBIS, positive behavioral intervention supports. We're looking at incorporating the Know the Signs program into May mental health awareness. And we also look at how we build capacity in our staff. So an example of that would be at the beginning of this year, all of our student services, all of our QSP staff engaged in youth mental health first aid training. And then we also are looking at adverse childhood experiences and the research around trauma and how that affects our young people. And we have 2 members of our staff that are also providing that training in our schools. So what we want to do is we want to change the lens in which adults are interacting with students so that we are very clear and informed and putting forth the supports needed to ensure that our students are well. The other thing I want to highlight as we move up the tiers is that we have more personalized supports. So it may be small group counseling or social skills building. And then in Tier 3, it's crisis response. And one of the things that we have in place is the securely alerts. So for our students that have Chromebooks, if they search any terms that are problematic, related to self-harm, related to violence, there's an alert that goes to a group of administrators, and that's followed up on immediately. And so that's just another way that we're increasing communication, and we're working together to ensure that the information that we have about how our students are doing is being met with the intervention that's necessary. We also believe in bullying prevention. We are a partner from the Mayor's Campaign to End Bullying. And what we know is that when students are connected, when we have a positive school climate, then the risk that we have for violence decreases because students are feeling like a part of their school community. And that's really what we want to build. And just when we think about it in general, right, we want kids waking up every day excited to go to school. So in addition to the ways in which we provide these supports at our school buildings, I also wanted to talk a little bit about how do we have these conversations with our children. It's not an easy thing to do necessarily. So as a trained mental health professional, I've often engaged in conversations with students where you have to ask very directly what's going on with them in order to ensure that we're getting the information that we need. Well, how do we do that within our own families? So even if I'm thinking about talking within my own family to my child, that feels different. And so one thing that's really important is that we want to emphasize safety. We want children to always realize that schools are safe places. And that we're all working together at schools, all of the adults, to ensure that our children are safe. We want to give them the time to talk. We want to realize that kids don't always want to have the conversation when we want to have it. So we need to look for signs that they give us that they're waiting to talk about something or something might be on their mind. And I trust, as parents, you know your child. So you kind of know what you're looking for, and you just need to give them that opportunity then to share with you. We always want to keep explanations developmentally appropriate. I provided a handout that you can pick up on the way back that really breaks this down according to preschool, elementary, and middle and high school, and thinks about what are these talking points. One way that I like to think about it is when you're looking at preschool and elementary age, the main points that you want to emphasize are safety and having a trusted adult. These are the things that are going to help you. These are your resources. As children get older, they also can have a conversation with you that acknowledges that they're aware of what's going on around them. I think sometimes more so than we maybe. And so they know if something's not right. And so who do they report that to? Are they coming to you? Who are the trusted adults in the building? What are their community resources? So that if something feels off or something isn't sitting right with them, they're able to have that conversation and ensure that somebody else knows about it. We want to think about limiting television and other media exposure when violent events do occur, especially keeping in mind that with YouTube, with social media, there is the availability of constant exposure that can increase anxiety, that can increase fear, and that can also desensitize us sometimes to how serious some of these events may be. And so, we really want to make sure that we're limiting the way in which our children take in this information and that we're having conversations with them about it. And maintaining a normal routine. So especially, if a child's communicating increased anxiety, one of the ways that we can really help them manage that is as we talk to them and as we support them, we maintain everything around them so that they know what to expect every single day. So when we talk about talking points, just to break down a few of these points a little bit more, schools are safe places, and school staff works really hard and communicates with parents and public safety providers to ensure that they stay safe and that we keep you safe. If you see or hear something that makes you feel nervous and makes you feel scared, say something, talk to somebody, know who your trusted adult is, because it's always better to reach out. Doing things that you enjoy, maintaining your routine, being around friends and family, it helps us feel better. It helps us not worry so much. So we want to stay connected and we want to maintain the things that bring us joy. And finally, and I think this is one of the most important things that we can all communicate, is that violence is never a solution to personal problems. There are always adults that can help. If you or a friend are experiencing a problem or struggling with emotion that feels like it's overwhelming, feels like it's uncontrollable or it's bigger than you, that's a sign that you need to let somebody know so that we can put in place the supports that help you manage that feeling. So that was just a brief overview. I hope it was helpful, and please take a handout if you want some further information and guidance about having these conversations. And always please feel free to reach out to us, the Department of Student Services, Alternative Programs, and Equity. We're happy to give you more information. Thank you.
Thank you, Faiza. As a nurse and as a parent of a child who struggled with anxiety, I really, really appreciate the talking points and the support we've received from ACPS along the way. Next up is you can't have a school security forum without police, right? So Chief Michael Brown is here to talk about the collaboration between ACPS and APD. And I really struggled with his bio. He has probably one of the most impressive bios I've read in a long time. What really struck me was all the awards he's received for community outreach. And that's apparent by his enthusiasm and just complete just quickness to be a part of this. So thank you.
Good evening. Let's try that again. I know we'll be here all night if we don't get a little bit more. Good evening. Good evening. First of all, it's a privilege to be here. I was in Chicago and I made a point of coming back so that I could be here for you tonight, because this is a very important issue. Your superintendent and I meet regularly, to talk about the safety of the schools and what's happening in there so that we can deal with things. What he said earlier about his commitment to school safety, I know firsthand because of the conversations we've had. So what I'd like to do, if I could, is briefly cover some of the things that we do and have done and will continue to do with ACPS. And then also talk about probably a more compelling issue, which ties into some of the previous conversations. First of all, we do have school resource officers in the schools as described by Jamie. These officers are specifically selected so they can interact with kids in the right way and the right basis. Not every cop has the ability to talk to kids. Go figure. Not every parent has the ability to talk to kids. Go figure. So we try to get the right person to come in that can make that connection with our young people. And what's amazing, those really good school resource officers have a way of mentoring and connecting with these young people to the extent that they mentor and help them beyond their school days. It's amazing to see some of that, and I've witnessed that here in this city with our police department with some of our officers. We also have the liaison officers. That's a program we just started here in the last year, and we partner with the fire department and with the sheriff's department. In fact, my wife has recently been assigned one of those schools. She's a deputy sheriff with the sheriff's office, and she wanted to know if it's okay. I said, well, it's okay if the sheriff says it's okay. But the fact is, these are so we can make that connection, and people are not afraid, certainly, of police officers, because we need to be able to establish that early on. Another thing that we do, we share information that happens in the schools. Our school resource officers provide patrol and everyone in our department with an update of what's happening in the schools. Because if something happens after hours or if assistance is needed, our officers should be informed of what's taking place so that they can respond appropriately and not overreact to a given situation. And that happens at every briefing on every day. So there's no doubt about what's taking place in and around the community. For example, the school started, we had some of our young people from T.C. Williams walking at this intersection back here, this convoluted intersection, against the red light. And we got word of that through our school resource officers, and guess who showed up? Motors and others who like to enforce traffic violations. So we can get people to stop and pay attention to, the traffic laws. Another thing that we do, quite frankly, is we work with ACPS in preparation, and we work with them on the ALICE training. And let me just also talk about ALICE for a moment. ALICE is probably the standardized training you see in the educational environment, especially when you have a custodial relationship between the teacher and with the student. It's as opposed to what you find in many employment circles, the run, hide, fight. Last thing you want to do is have a first grader try to go fight with somebody. And there's no custodial arrangement in most cases for adults. So the training is for a different situation, a different target audience. And we work with ALICE and with ACPS in the provision of ALICE. Our SROs, I believe, are all been trained in that. And if I could, for a moment, I'd like to point out somebody who came along with me tonight who is in charge of our School Resource Officer Program and our Community Relations Division, Captain Shannon Soriano. Wave to the crowd if you would, Shannon. A couple other things we've done in preparation. In this last year, we now have the floor plans and the site plans for every school loaded in our computers. So our officers know exactly when they're coming up, where to go, if we get a good description as to what they can see, they can bring it up in their computers in the car. We've also been working diligently in developing training programs for our officers, and we right now are working on an NIGA-funded grant to have scenario-based training in our briefings, many of which will involve school scenarios, so that our officers are thinking about how to respond should the unfortunate consequence occur. We get a 911 call at one of our schools. I also want to talk a little bit about traffic safety. The way our kids get to and from school is very important because the safety doesn't just start in the school, it starts on the way to school. So we talk a little bit about safe routes to schools, which we've worked with Jamie and his staff to update all these safe routes to schools for all the schools this year. We've also set in motion some discussion about reviewing and have reviewed most of the bus stops that are throughout the city to make sure that that's a proper or safe location for the ingress and egress of our kids off of school buses. We're also in conversation with ACPS over the stop arm cameras enforcement, which is those cameras that go on the buses so we can look at, people who don't stop when the stop sign is deployed. And that work is ongoing, and we just had a meeting 2 weeks ago on that very issue. And then the last thing I want to talk about is kind of a positive thing. Some of you may or may not be aware of our teen academy that we work with, mostly with the kids from ACPS, especially TC. That particular program was awarded a national award by the Anti-Defamation League about two and a half years ago. It's now been taken over by one of our individuals who actually grew up in the city, and Officer Dylan Ignacio, who has now expanded the program, made it even more vibrant, if you will. He relates to these kids because he almost looks like one of them. I can say that because I don't. But, what's amazing is that we have people standing in line to do this, and they do the academy 3 times during the year, even during the summer. And that gets back to trying to set up a relationship with the young people. And last but not least, we also are starting to work on an internship program. 2 years ago, we had 1. Last year, we had 3. And this year, we're gonna have 3 and maybe as many as 5 that can come into the police department and do some work that's not gonna put them in jeopardy, but again, so they can understand what it is we do. Because again, that's an investment we want to make in our community, especially our young people. Now I want to talk about something a little bit more serious. Over the last 3 months, I've been working with the International Association of Chiefs of Police as a member of a task force to look at mass violence. We've had briefings from up to 16 different shootings and 2 not involving weapons. And unfortunately, some of those involve schools. We had the police chief and the tactical individuals from Connecticut who dealt with Sandy Hook. We had the people who came in from Parkland and dealt with that. And we've had professional mental health experts and others come to us and talk about some of the similarities that they've seen in some of this kind of behavior. The goal is that IACP is trying to develop some recommendations or guidance for police chiefs across the country in terms of 3 phases. The pre-event or preparation, the tactical response during the event, and then finally, how do you handle the post-event issues? Never thought in my career that I'd sit on a task force and listen to people tell stories like I've heard. The last one of which I heard was in Chicago last Saturday. There is some interesting pieces on this that dovetail with some of the communication that you've heard here before. Access to weapons is a common theme, and it's not just guns. The other piece is observe changes in behavior. Not everyone was diagnosed with some kind of a psychosis, but their behavior changed. And in many cases, people knew about it. Their siblings, their parents, in some cases, teachers in school. So I can't say enough about if you see something that doesn't make sense, it's time to report it to somebody so they can do an intervention. Sadly, that's not the kids' responsibility, that's ours as adults. And frankly, when it's reported to us, we should do something about it. And in some cases, that's taken place, in some cases it didn't. The same goes for adults who are in those situations. We got briefed on what happened in Texas, what happened in Ohio. And there's similarities, the only differences are the ages. And so those are the things that we think we're gonna have to work on as a nation. And we need to kind of do it as a community here. Now, how does the police respond for interventions? Well, certainly if there's a crime, we have to respond and do what we have to do to protect people. But I'm a big believer in diversion and intervention before it becomes a problem. I've mentioned that throughout this community. I've had that conversation with the superintendent, and I'd much rather see somebody have a frank conversation about somebody's behavior in and around our schools, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a kid, it could be an adult who's doing the same thing. So we can do some intervention and deal with that individual before that 911 call. But the police can't be everywhere. And neither can the school staff. We need to work together to do that. It may not sound very complicated, but apparently it is, because all too often, at least the briefings that we've received on the mass violence issue, doesn't take place as frequently as it could. So, we have some challenges before us. And they're gonna have to be constantly on guard to make sure that we meet those challenges. As a community, as parents, as friends, as family members. We own that. And it is our job. I look forward to any kind of questions you may have about that. I hope that the ICP is actually looking to be able to present its thing probably before the end of the year, if not in the first quarter of next year. The detail that we've gotten in the briefings has been instructive. I've been hanging around cops, some of you have heard me say it before, for 44 years now. And I was never so amazed to hear what I heard on this task force. So I just don't want it to happen in this city. Okay? Because I live here too. Okay. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chief Brown. Our next speaker is Jenna Alexander, and she is the Virginia PTA Advocacy Chair, and I think she wins the award for the greatest distance travel tonight. Jenna came out from Loudoun County, and we really appreciate her being here. I think sometimes we don't realize that PTAs do more than teacher appreciation activities and fall fundraisers and fun stuff for our kids. PTA is about engaging and empowering families to make every child's potential reality. And as part of that, we have to advocate for our kids. So Jen is doing that for Virginia, and she's going to talk about the National PTA Advocacy Campaign as well. Not sure if people are aware that the National PTA is headquartered in Alexandria. So special for us. Anyway, thank you, Jenna. We look forward to your presentation.
Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's true, it was a little bit of a journey out here. I didn't anticipate the rush hour traffic. I should have known better. I don't live that far away. I'm just right over the borderline, really, right into Loudoun County. And so I used to be the director of the Hunt District PTA, and right now I'm the vice president of advocacy for the Virginia PTA. So I've been overseeing all of the PTAs across Loudoun County for the past 2 years. And so I wanted to talk with you a little bit tonight, give you some background on National PTA's position statements, talk to you a little bit about the difference between position statements and resolutions and how we're using those in the state of Virginia and how we can lift up our voices together. So to start with a little bit of background, so National PTA has been advocating for common sense gun safety, violence prevention policies for about 30 years now. And I think the important part is we've been listening to all of the speakers tonight to recognize is that school safety is not a one piece, right? It's a multifaceted issue that needs to have lots of different approaches to make sure that we're really taking care of our kids and lifting them up. Okay, so National PTA's gun violence positions, they believe that the most effective day-to-day school climate is gun-free, which includes not harming teachers and administrators, making sure that the policymakers are addressing the ease of access to firearms and weapons, and then that gun safety and violence prevention needs to also be respectful of the rights of law-abiding gun owners, while at the same time protecting our communities. And so there's two tools that we usually talk about when we talk about PTA advocacy. One is position statements. These are things that are usually based on current events, and they are voted on by your executive board. So these would be the people that you've elected either at your council or district, or in my case at the state level or at the national level, to be researching policies and making statements on us. The other one is resolutions. So these are things that are, in both cases, deeply researched, right? These are not statements of opinion. These are based on research. And when you put resolutions together and you send them to me at the state level, I'm looking for research that is no more than 6 years old and at least 3 pieces of corroborating research. So I don't want to just have a random newspaper article. I want to know that you really researched it and have 3 different places that the exact same thing is said, and that it's no more than 6 years old. So our position statements are based on fact and research. I think that's an important part as we get into some of these challenging conversations. So at the national level, I want to start at the top and then kind of work our way down. Normally when I talk with my PTAs, I remind us that it's actually kind of a pyramid, right? It actually starts at the top with our local units and with our members, and then we have these layers of support underneath to lift us up. But today I'm going to start from the bottom, really, and go up.
Speak up a little bit louder.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
just your microphone.
Sorry. Is that better?
Yes.
Oh, I can hear it is better. Wow. I didn't even realize that. Okay. I better stand a little closer. Okay, so for those of you that closely follow PTA politics, I don't know how many of you are following us anxiously on Facebook and sending us loves and likes all the time, but Leslie Boggs is the new National PTA president since back in July, and as she's come into office, she's taken a pretty aggressive stance in making some positions on gun safety. National PTA has been very actively involved through 2018. We were part of the Federal School Safety Commission, and as she stepped in, you know, we constantly have things happening across the country that are concerning. And so beginning in August, she started sending out action alerts asking that Congress return from recess and take up gun violence prevention legislation. Then in August, she also put out an op-ed in Education Week asking for Congress to take action. And in September, participated in the U.S. House of Representatives Gun Violence Prevention Task Force Forum called Impact of Gun Violence on Children and the Need for a Senate Vote on Universal Background Checks. And so I want to talk a little bit about how we kind of elevate our voices, because it's one thing for us to make statements through the president, it's another thing for us to lift our voices up together. So National PTA has a Day on the Hill, so it's a little eye there, but so as part of the 116th Congress back in March, we went down to Capitol Hill and we met with all of our federally elected legislators. And so those are your district directors, your council presidents, anybody that's here local. We have the unique advantage here that we are very close to Capitol Hill and that we can go down and advocate in a way that's very different than the folks when they come out from Alaska. But we usually all get together, and so you'll hear the different opinions from Alaska and from Oklahoma and from Texas, and make sure that we're all sharing that same thought philosophy. And there were 5 bills this past March that we specifically asked Congress to support. One was the Elementary and Secondary School Counseling Act. There was a Bipartisan Background Check Act. Also, there were actually two about background checks. One was about red flag laws and the Extreme Risk Protective Order. And one was for gun violence prevention, and the other one was an assault weapon ban. And so those are our core, kind of when we talk about that gun violence prevention piece. But as we know, school safety has a much broader scope. So I want to make sure we spend a few minutes and talk about our Safe and Supportive Schools position statement that comes from National PTA. This is developed with the National Association of School Psychologists, and it really forms the core of the work that we've been doing for a very long time in Virginia and also at the national level. And you'll see some of these same things repeated. So there's 4 core themes that are in the school safety position statement. The first and most important one, as we all know, is communication. Right? There's nothing more important than how you communicate to me about the safety of my children in the school building. When there is a crisis, how you communicate out to me what's going to happen, how I get reunified with them after a crisis, and then even to the point of what do we expect for a drill? What type of communication do we have for our parents before school starts so that we know what they can anticipate, so that we know what the kids are going through in school. So this is a big starting point, is this communications of policies and procedures. Funding, right? This is where the majority of our advocacy work happens, is that funding for our schools. In the state of Virginia, and I know how much time you spent looking at this, but our physical buildings are usually 80% of that funding comes from our local taxes and 20% comes from the state. And then when we start looking at operating funds, generally, the large majority, the bulk of it is coming from our local taxes, and only 30 to 40% is coming from the state. So that's why it's really important to get engaged here locally with your council and with your district to make sure that we are pushing forward those programs that we know need extra support. So this is the bulk of our work, also school climate and support services, and this is what you've been talking about here tonight. These are unified mental health teams. These are our school counselors, school psychologists, school social workers, and nurses coming together to form that holistic safety net of support for our students and making sure that they're adequately funded. The kind of interesting part about the school counselor ratio here is that in the last General Assembly session, we had specifically asked for funding for school counselors, and they underfunded it. So I'm going to talk about that, come back to it a little bit, and talk about what's happening in Virginia. But at the national level, we're having that same question about funding for mental health, and then also physical entry to the school buildings, right? So these are your, and I missed some of it, I don't know if you have Raptor systems or the systems that are testing our parents and doing the background checks for them as they come into their buildings, making sure that they are safe and secure, even just physically, right? That we don't have asbestos or mold or crumbling ceiling tiles. So back in 2019, it's a little high here. I don't know if that's something that
I don't think it's something.
it's not something I can choose. So in 2019, the Virginia PTA was asked to participate in the 2019 House School Select Safety Committee. This is the first commission that the Virginia House has put together in 115 years, and it was a direct result of the response to Parkland, Florida, and the shooting that had happened there. And so it was a committee that was comprised bipartisan of Democrats and Republicans, and they came out with 24 recommendations. And those 24 recommendations break into 7 broad categories. And so here's our school counselor realignment one, right up there at the top, right? This is the biggest thing they put out, was talking about this change that we had at the federal level when we rolled out the Every Student Succeeds Act. We now require our school counselors to spend a great deal of time, starting in kindergarten, talking about career development. But we're also at the same time asking them to put tremendous effort and support into supporting the mental health of our students. And so we were asking for that ratio of school counselors to be lowered down to what the national recommendation is, which is 1 to 250. The state government started off with a recommendation from the governor to try to work down to that level over the course of 3 years. But what the General Assembly said they were going to do was 375. They were going to try to get there, but they stopped short at like 455. So right now they've underfunded it, and we're going to continue to go back this year and ask again, not only for the school counselors, but to bring down the ratios for our school psychologists and school social workers. Right now, school psychologists and school social workers don't have any limits that are set in the state staffing standards, which are called the standards of quality. So you generally have like one school support person to 1,000, 1,500 students, which is not really acceptable, right? You can't begin to capture the needs of our students at that kind of staffing ratio. The other one that was put together, and this starts to come to that same piece, this was putting mental and behavioral health into the Family Life Education program, and then providing a suicide prevention tip line, so that they could text or get into contact with somebody if they felt like they were in trauma or needed to talk with someone. We also have enhancing training for school-wide staff and students and law enforcement, making sure that our police officers are the ones that know how to talk to the parents, that our custodians and cafeteria workers, that everybody's on the lookout for how we relate to our students and lift them up and take care of them during the school day. Also, again, support for our school resource officers, making sure that there's strong memorandums of understanding between the school system and our police forces. And again, right, funding for our campus security. So these are the basic recommendations that have come out of the General Assembly, and which form the basis of what we had gone down last year to talk about. I know out on the table, you guys had the 2018 legislative priorities, but I want to make sure that you know we have legislative priorities that are for 2019 to 2020, and they cover a broad range of things. So they start off by talking about the standards of quality, in particular, taking care of the mental health ratios, talking about the importance of unified mental health teams, and then picking up that physical building safety, talking about the availability of broadband. Across the state of Virginia, there's 660,000 Virginians that do not have access to broadband. This has a huge impact on the way they interact with their homework. School building modernization, because while we're talking about technology and things here, down in the south of Virginia, when they have extra money, they're just fixing the basics, the ceiling tiles, the things that are leaking. We have world languages in there, and then we come to the core piece that we're here tonight talking about, which is school safety, and we pick up these big, broad themes again, which is physical building improvements, communication to parents, training for school-based employees, and memorandums of understanding. And so as we come into the next General Assembly session, we know that in the next 10 days, right, we're gonna have a new General Assembly that's gonna come together. And so what we'll be doing at the state level is taking a look at what bills they put forward and seeing where we think there's opportunity to move the dial, right? Because ultimately we know there's some things that they're not gonna consider, and we're gonna look for ways that we can move that conversation forward. And if need be, we'll come back out and take a vote, or we will take a new position statement at the state level so that we can make comment on things that are happening at the General Assembly. And so I want to just give you a quick reminder about how we use some of these position statements, right? So we started off talking about National PTA's Gun Violence Prevention Statement. As a member, right, you could go down to the school board or to your legislator and you could say, as a member of the National PTA, I want to remind you that these are the things that I support, okay? As a PTA, it's a little bit different. If you are somebody that's in a leadership role within your PTA, just because you're the president doesn't give you the authority to go down and speak on behalf of your families without talking to them first. Okay, so this is a big part of it. We are here as a membership association to have those difficult conversations, to make sure that everybody's voice is heard, and so you want to make sure that you're sitting in your general membership meetings having these challenging conversations. If you're not comfortable having them, then it's kind of a clue that maybe it's the wrong path for you to be on, okay? But you want to make sure that you've had that conversation, decided that it's okay for your president to, for instance, and I'll use an example from Chesterfield, to go down to the school board and talk about school resource officers, and if you want them in elementary schools, or if you like the way your lockdown drills work. Whatever those cases are that are happening locally in your buildings, you need to make sure you're coming together and voting on it. And that's what we're doing at the state level too. We're looking at what's happening in the General Assembly, and we'll decide where we think our voice is best heard and where it's most powerful. And so just, you know, a reminder there about how we can lift up our voices together. And so real quick here, this is a quick reminder, so when there are things that are challenging, right, go ahead and ask some questions. Research, make sure that you're making informed decisions, and then advocate. Send me a position statement, send me a resolution, do your research, send it to me, tell me like, Jen, I think this is a problem over here, can we look at this? Is it happening across the state? Oftentimes I'll be like, oh, did you know this is also happening someplace else? Let's kind of start to pull our resources together so we can lift up our voices and do the best we can. I've got some social media hashtags out there that we're using this year. Social media is a good way to help us connect on those same themes and topics. I'll make sure that Maureen has these so that you guys can share them also. And then I want to invite you to join me on January the 27th. We have Virginia PTA General Assembly Day. We have training that starts on Saturday, so you can come down for training on Saturday and Sunday, and we're going to have specialty speakers, kind of like you have here today, so we can hear from them, share thoughts and ideas across the state. And then on January the 27th, which is a Monday, we'll get together, hopefully with a bunch of our legislators, have a power breakfast down on Capitol Hill, which is actually, I guess it's Capitol Square. It's right down in Richmond, it's not the Hill, it's Square. And then from 9 o'clock to 11 o'clock, we'll go meet with our legislators one-on-one and share those unique ideas and concerns that we have from our local schools, right? Because at the end of the day, like, we can talk about all these different facets and how they fit together, but it's about your stories. It's about the stories and experiences that you have with your children and bringing them to your legislators and sharing them and making sure that they connect with those stories and that they can take action for you. And then we'll have an opportunity from 12 o'clock. We can go watch the House or Senate session. I'll ask somebody down on the floor to specially introduce us. So we'll be sitting up in the gallery and they'll say, welcome to the Virginia PTA. And everybody that's there will stand up and they'll clap and applaud for us. It's kind of fun. And then if you want to, there's also an education subcommittee meeting in the afternoon. But this is a great opportunity for us to go down together and ask for those same things. I give you little placard cards so that you have something you can walk into your legislator and say, these are the 5 things I want to have you change, sort of like how I talked about what happened at National PTA, right? We had 5 bills we wanted to push last year, and so we'll do the same thing this year at the state level. And so if you have any questions, you can always email me. I'm happy to reach out to you. Sometimes I'm a little slow right now, but I will get back to you, and we can share whatever your specific concern is. So thank you so much for having me today.
Score, it's 0-0. Thank you, Jenna. Challenge accepted on the advocacy forefront. We've got a great active group of PTA parents, so you might be hearing from us. I want to invite all the speakers up on the stage for Q&A. Sorry, Jenna. And we will have volunteers collecting cards. It's great. We have up to a half hour for Q&A. If you so desire, you can stay the entire time, or if not, go check out the game. We'd like you to stay.
hiring school counselors and social workers. Is ACPS planning on hiring an additional staff when it comes to social workers and counselors for each building in the increase of what our children are dealing with, or are we, also including, like, with all the other things that they have to deal with, including 504 meeting plans, tag, IEPs, and the non-counseling responsibilities that they have to do.
So we look at our counseling numbers as well as our social workers, our psychologists. We look at those numbers annually. So every year we're constantly evaluating whether our numbers are accurate. Right now we're really ahead of what the state requirements are, especially in regards to our counselors for our schools. So we try not to use the state formula. We exceed that because we know the importance of having the necessary supports for students in their social and emotional needs in schools. With the additional things that are happening in regards to just the country, across the country in itself, we have focused on social, emotional, and academic learning, which we're calling SEAL, SEAL. That's the acronym. We have a lot of acronyms in education. And this provides us strategies and kind of a platform to make sure that we are meeting the social, emotional, and academic needs of our students. And that does require, over time, and will, in some cases, may require some additional staffing that we have. But we have what we call the multi-tiered support system in every single one of our schools. That's another acronym, MTSS, where there's a support team that consists of our counselor, our social worker, our psychologist, our administrator, and in some cases our teachers, who come together on a case-by-case basis, depending on the student's need, to provide a support plan if a student is experiencing some type of challenge within our school. So we are well equipped to serve all of our students in their social and emotional needs.
Okay, I've got a number of questions that kind of feel that are dealing with the ALICE training. Is there any research being done regarding whether ALICE training is the best solution in dealing with active intruders? How does ALICE affect students' mental health overall? I don't know who wants to take that one.
So that's the answer is yes. I mean, the program is early in ACPS, and we are beginning to gather that kind of data, and we do work with our student support teams whenever we do ALICE drills, whenever we do ALICE training, to gather data and to find out how if it affects anyone and how it affects them.
There has been research on ALICE training that's been done in the educational environment, the school environment. And that's one of the reasons why you see so many schools and school districts adopting it for that environment. To Jamie's point, there is a good deal of research or some comments about the implementation of ALICE. It has to be done in such a way that it will not frighten the young people in particular. And I know ACPS is sensitive to that based upon my conversations with some of our school resource officers who've been a part of that training within the school district.
Following up to ALICE, we seem to have a number of questions about ALICE. How is this provided to the elementary students versus the middle and high school students? Educational advice.
It's provided through the lessons that I spoke about, and there are differences obviously in maturity and learning how they learn things, and we try to recognize those differences and provide it in different ways.
I might add, if you want, what Jamie's trying to say is that the curriculum is developed for the target audience. So if you're going through an elementary school, it will be different than it will be, say, in a high school. And there's a variety of lesson plans that are applied in a sense.
There are, yes, yes, there are differences in the lesson plans as they apply to elementary school kids. You know, for instance, in things that they're not exposed to, or things that older kids are exposed to, and how we teach them to go to safe places and evacuate and those sorts of things.
So a part of the process to develop the elementary, the middle, and the high school curriculum for Alice was to bring a group of individuals, that includes teachers, parents, administrators, worked on a committee last spring to develop these lessons. The purpose in bringing people from these different backgrounds, and we wanted to ensure we had elementary teachers, we had middle school teachers, we had high school teachers, because kids at those different levels, they really have like totally different ability levels as well as maturity levels to deal with this very deep conversation about life safety, because really Alice is about life safety. It's not just things that are applicable if you were to have an active shooter in a school, but you know, strategies and skills that you could apply anywhere. And if you all are following the news, these things are just not happening in schools. Shootings, they're happening anywhere. Unfortunately, they're happening in churches as well. So I think that the way we wanted to strategize and modify our curriculum is to make sure that they were age appropriate for the elementary and for the middle, and as well as for the high school and our staff members throughout the school division.
Just to follow up on that, does ACPS plan on providing information to parents about Alice?
We do provide information to parents. We provide parent letters that we put out to schools with the lessons that were to go home. I think we had some failures this year as we rolled it out in September with providing communications to parents, but we get better every year at this, and our intent is to be fully transparent with it. For instance, this year, all those lessons and the parent letters will go on the website. We'll use Twitter to distribute those, and we'll also rely on the schools to send those home in backpacks and to communicate with their individual group of parents.
I'll just plug the PTAs too.
Sorry. What lessons from the various state, local, federal commissions on school safety have been implemented at ACPS? For example, Federal Commission on School Safety gave about 100 best practices, such as shutting off the fire alarm.
We can't shut off fire alarms. No, that's against state fire code. So we don't shut off fire alarms. Best practices are locking doors, operational type security things, making sure staff members are wearing ID badges, making sure visitors are checking in through our visitor management systems, wearing identifiable badges, making sure all doors are locked, making sure staff members are alert to things that are going on in the schools.
And fortunately, because we're in the Commonwealth of Virginia, we are required by law to make sure we have safety plans in our buildings. We have to send those to the Virginia Department of Education annually. And that is something that we do in collaboration with our Alexandria City Police Department, getting feedback on what our plans are. We're making sure that we're meeting all the state as well as the federal guidelines in regards to safety in our schools as well.
And they even make me show my ID if I want to come on campus. Dressed like this.
Okay. I think this one is for you, Dr. James. When a child is assaulted at an ACPS school, what information is provided to parents? Do you share the victim's parents' info on disciplinary actions for the attacker, and how do you ensure it won't happen again?
So I wish I could ensure that it would never happen again to a student, but I'm not 100 proof, and I will never say that I or the school division is. But what we do is we make sure that parents are informed if a student is involved in some type of incident at school. We do not provide information about what happened with the attacker. And the reasoning for that is because students as well as staff in ACPS all have rights. So there are student privacy rights that we are responsible as a school division to follow. So because I have a license in the state of Virginia, and teachers have a license, and administrators have a license, we have to uphold to those standards. and we are not to provide any information about students' disciplinary records, students' health situations or concerns, students' addresses, or any kind of personal information that a student has, and we will be violating those laws. So that's the reason why we don't share what has happened to the student or what has happened to the attacker in a particular situation. We also make sure if there's a police report or anything involved, that parents are able to view that information, particularly the information that their student has written. We contact parents when police officers are when police officers are getting a witness statement from a particular student. Parents do have the right to look at that. They also have the right to sit in on those, in that particular witness statement meeting with the police. But that's pretty much our practice for an incident that happens in school.
If I could add to that, we have a memorandum of understanding which guides our cooperation and interaction in this area. And the superintendent's absolutely right. We don't track nor are we interested in individual administrative actions or that the district has with a student, or for that matter, an employee, unless it's reported to us as a crime. There are some mandatory reporting issues that the schools have to report to us under the Commonwealth statutes. But generally speaking, we're only interested in looking at crimes. Whether somebody has a hat on in the hallway, we really don't care about that. But we do care about, something that happens where someone is hurt. And I also must add, it's not as simple as it is with adults, because we're dealing with juveniles. There are parental rights under those juvenile laws. There's all sorts of things that we have to train our officers in to be sensitive to. And that's one of the values of the school resource officers. They know those differences.
And the last part of the question I didn't answer, which was in regards to the student coming back to the school and their safety. There are safety plans that are put in place if a student is involved in some type of altercation or incident or harassment that's occurred in the school. We try to have a safety plan. Typically, we have a safety plan depending on the situation and how severe it is, so that the student, when they come back to school, that there is a structure in place to provide the necessary supports. And that the adults are aware of, particular situations. Because sometimes you may have an incident where a student might be removed from a school for a period of time, but they return at some point, and that they're going to be in the same space at some point over the next 2 or 3 years that they're in school together. So there are parameters that we put in place, from schedule changes to safety plans to who do you report to if you feel uncomfortable. But those are the types of plans that come in place before a student returns.
Okay. A follow-up question to the ALICE training. There's a number of questions regarding students are coming home and telling their parents about throwing things, but that's about it that parents are hearing about. Can you elaborate a little bit more on the throwing things aspect?
Yeah, that's part of a lesson that teaches distraction. If someone were to be trying to harm someone in a room, if someone were to get past a barricade, get past a locked door, come into a classroom, that is part of the lesson that's taught in distraction, throwing something to distract that individual, to allow the people in the classroom to evacuate that classroom and get away. And that's only taught in grades 3 and up.
I do want to make the point, though, because I got some emails last year where there were situations, well, these were emails, and I don't know if they were true. I didn't find out if they were true, that their kids were throwing canned goods and that type of thing. That didn't under my, I'm not familiar with that happening in ACPS, and I heard those stories last spring. But what I will say is that we wanted to make sure we had a curriculum this year, because we did have situations where, some of our staff members may have shared with kids, let's practice, right? Let's practice throwing something in the particular class. Or you pretend, I forgot the scenario that somebody used last year, but it wasn't something we asked them to use within the classroom. And that's why we knew we needed a curriculum so that teachers could have a script and not ad-lib as to what you should do when we're doing these training sessions throughout the first 20 days of school.
Kind of switching gears to mental health a little bit. How many student suicides have there been over the past couple of years? How many involved guns? And how many students have been shot out of school hours?
So I'll say that that's not information that I have. So while I know that as a school system we respond when there are incidents of crisis, that's not information that I personally have access to.
We, as a department, we respond to what we call sudden death calls, which include suicides, some are natural causes, passings. We also respond to any shots fired call. As far as young people being killed in Alexandria, I don't believe in the last 3-4 years we've had anything like that. We may have had some that are shot. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, and I don't have the actual numbers, but we haven't had young people being shot in the city. What we have had in the city are people with many cases domestic issues, relationship issues. The victim is known, the suspect, and they've had a relationship. And many of those are the kind of shootings that we've been experiencing here. But as far as young person suicide, I'm not aware of that. Since I've been here, it'll be 3 years in January, I don't think we've had one. Which is a testament, hopefully, to the intervention efforts of ACPS and others.
I want to keep the microphone. I've got some questions for the police department. A number of them. Can the Alexandria Police Department make arrests at ACPS? Can ACPS call APD for children? And are the school resource officers armed?
The school resource officers are armed just like any other APD officer. They wear a softer uniform. They wear golf shirts or polo shirts as opposed to what you see me wearing right now. They can make arrests on school property or anywhere within the city with their jurisdiction. In addition to that, we are called to ACPS facilities periodically to take crime reports and to investigate crimes that may occur on campus. I don't have the actual numbers, but it doesn't happen as frequently in other places I've worked. And I think that's a testament to ACPS and how they're responding to the kids. But we will take crime reports, and if we have something that merits some filing, we'll file it. But hopefully we don't have to get to that point. We get some early intervention with some of these young people.
Here looks like another concern. Can you talk about gangs at TC and other schools and how the Alexandria Police Department is protecting the neighborhoods near the schools?
Yeah, we get that every now and again. A lot of folks say that, we have gangs in the city. Every city has gangs. Our gang activity is nothing compared to some of the others in Northern Virginia. We've had a few incidents that have popped up, and mostly not involving people that are in the school system. We do have heard reports in the past of some gangs members or gang affiliated members, and there is a difference being in and around. In one case, one of our middle schools, and in one case at TC, when it turned out the one at TC was an example of what they weren't on campus. They were actually engaged in a certain activity out by the park behind TC, involving in some cases some drugs and some other things. And we went in there with some of our undercover officers and some of the other things and put a stop to that. What we really rely on in many cases when we're dealing with gangs is for the community to tell us what's taking place. And a lot of that's happening not only through our SROs in the school environment, but it's also happening through our community outreach and some of our beat assignments where officers are actually establishing relationships with the community and people will tell them things which allow us to look into stuff. So the officers are fully engaged. Our community outreach officers, which Shannon has as well, are also fully engaged, and especially in targeted areas where we know we have at least known gang members. But the gang issue, knock on wood, at this point in the city is nothing compared to what the other communities across Northern Virginia have.
I was just gonna add that,
Tear it all apart.
I was gonna add that since I've been here, we have not had a gang situation at the high school or the middle school. I know coming in my first 100 days, I would hear in the community that there are gangs at TC Williams, right? And I was like, okay, well, where are they? Because my daughter's here at TC now this year, so I was looking to find out for my own child to see what I needed to know prior to her starting high school. And there really is, I think, some misinformation that's out in our community. I can't speak to what has happened in the past, but there was this perception that there are gangs in the schools, in the hallways, and drugs, and that is not the case. And what I always ask our families who are considering TC Williams, come and visit our school. Come and see our building. Come during the school day to get a tour of our school, so you can actually see if you're looking to bring your child into the high school, because it will give you an idea of what our building is like on a day-to-day basis. I can tell you, not only as superintendent, but also as a parent of a high school student, that if our schools were not safe, my children wouldn't be in these schools. So my wife would say, I don't care if you're the superintendent, right? So I just do need to make it clear to us, and even our families who are in our schools, to when you're hearing that out in the community, that you're asking them, well, where did you get that information from? Because what I've heard when I ask that question, well, tell me where you got that information from. I typically am getting this information from someone who doesn't have kids in our schools. And if that were the case and our schools were so unsafe, right, we wouldn't have 4,000 kids in that building every day. And I can promise you that.
What kind of calls do the police department get about schools? Are they only at school time or after school? Who do you call if you see a problem at Bradley, at schools, or in the neighborhood?
Okay, we get calls 24/7. Sometimes it involves ACPS students, sometimes it doesn't. We respond to all those calls. If we get a call, if we go to ACPS property, we check in like we normally do. We handle the call, we do the investigation, determine what the appropriate action is. Same thing after school. For example, we've had a couple of incidents just this week, and we believe involving some young people up at Bradley Center. Those cases are being investigated right now as a potential assault and battery. That's a felony in this state. That's something that no one should have to put up with. If there's something there that we can make a case on it, we'll prosecute it appropriately through the Commonwealth's attorney. Most of the stuff we get with ACPS are things like, some missing property, possibly some stolen property, maybe an unresolved administrative fight or something like that the school district would like us to take a report on, or a parent demands something. But generally speaking, we don't have that much crime on ACPS property. When you think about the number of students and the number of schools, we don't have that much in terms of calls.
Okay. A group of GW students are skateboarding to school from the Northridge neighborhood. They are reckless. They take up the whole street and harass drivers. What is the school/police doing about this?
I'll tell you what, if they're on that property, Shannon will take that back and talk to some of our patrol colleagues and also our traffic safety section. Maybe we can find what I call an opportunity to educate ourselves.
Okay. Can you explain what happened at?
I was just going to say that actually we've spoken to a couple of those students already at GW and their parents, because that was really a phone call to the homes. Now there could be new students that are doing some of this, but that's a phone call to the home and a conversation with our kids just about safety and how do you get to school, right? Because the problem, if this question is related to the situation I'm aware of, the problems with the students, they were in the middle of the street, right? It's unsafe to be in the middle of the street on your way to school, and that was the conversation we were having with those particular kids at the beginning of the school year. But things that are brought to our attention, we make sure that we talk with the source, and that's our kids and our parents.
An example of a partnership, like in the traffic arena, remember I mentioned about Quaker, Braddock, and King Street, that intersection down there? Before we went down there, the school district, actually in Jamie's office, with TC in particular, educated the kids about pedestrian safety before they went down there. So it wasn't like we're just swooping in and taking and writing tickets. We went down there to educate folks so they didn't get hit and become a hood ornament at some point.
Quick note, Nat's score is the Nats 0, Astros 1.
That's not good.
No,
It's not too far. It's just a big.
no, it's stressful. It's very stressful. Yeah, okay. Can you explain what happened at Bradley Shopping Center last Friday after an early dismissal and what you're doing to prevent further incidents at that shopping center?
And that's the one I was just mentioning. Those incidents are under investigation. And I can't comment on an open investigation right now. It wouldn't be prudent.
And going back to Alice, Alice is controversial. Even Arlington SRDs recently said they don't know how to make it age appropriate for young kids. I think it is dangerous. If my elementary school is at a schooler is at a restaurant with a shooter, and he decides to throw something at the shooter, and all of the patrons are hiding, he will be he will be shot first, as evidenced by the Capitol Gazette shooting. Can we opt out?
No, there is no opt-out of the safety drill. So the answer, the short answer to that is no. The longer answer is that if your child is in K1 or 2, they're not being taught to throw anything. They may have heard that. They may have heard that somewheres, but they're not being taught.
That they're being given in the book. My 5-year-old told me. My 5-year-old shouldn't know about that. So,
Okay. No, they shouldn't. But if they do, that's not something that's being taught to those children. Okay? And so.
So I think we'll be able to, we'll be able to reevaluate that if that's happening at the kindergarten level. So what we have to do as we go through the curriculum every year, one thing for us is it's always open for the discussion of how we make refinements to our curriculum. We look at last year's implementation of this year. We've made some drastic revisions to that, and the feedback that we get this year, we're going to make drastic revisions for next year. So the input that you all are giving us about if they're kindergartners who are hearing about throwing devices or throwing anything or objects at a potential intruder, we're going to take that back to our team, and we can have discussions about what revisions we do with that curriculum. So we do meet, we have a committee that meets, because our training happens the first 20 days of school. So we have our committee that meets throughout the year to make those necessary revisions, and this will be one thing that we will definitely take back to our team.
This is also related. How is the appropriate age decided for Alice? Elementary schoolers don't have the skills to throw something at a shooter, cover their body, and run simultaneously. They don't have situational awareness to make decisions based on options. They need clear direction. They freeze with too many choices, which leaves them standing still in front of a shooter. What age is this right for?
So these things are all decided by a committee of folks who educate professionally, and that's who we take these ideas to. That's who we take these concepts to, and that's where the decision is made.
How does Alice affect students' mental health overall? Is there any attention to the trauma that Alice might inflict on students?
There is. Every time we do a drill, every time we teach these lessons, we work with our student support teams in every school, and we ask them to make sure that they're checking in with students, and we talk to teachers about if students are showing signs of anxiety, if they're showing anything off, that they should direct them to the student support teams and have folks talk to them. Yeah.
Just from the student services perspective, I can add that that is a question that came up with the qualified school professional when they asked, for guidance and making sure that they're available. And so that it has been included in the protocols that are in place. And when there are drills or if anything comes up that students are concerned about, there's always member of the SST at that school available for the student to offer that support. So we take that very seriously.
Okay.
I have a follow-up question. Is that okay?
Yeah.
So, I had a third grader who came home and said that she and her classmates were gonna throw things at if there was an intruder. And she gave me some examples of things like pencils, that they were gonna throw pencils at the intruder. That does not seem very effective to me at all. In fact, it would draw more attention to her. So what I'm hearing is that you're gonna reevaluate this in the coming year. But right now, we have students, 5-year-olds or my third grader, that are thinking that this, what they've been taught or what they walked away from those lessons is gonna stay in place for this entire year until there's a reevaluation period. So I think that this conversation brings to light things that should be addressed, in the next coming weeks or months. And we're all saying this is a problem. You're saying, tell us the problems. And I think that you have to do something, unless you can say, that was the goal. That was the goal for my 3-year-old, and third grader to walk away and think that she can throw pencils at somebody who's shooting at her. So I'm wondering if you can, one, address whether you think that's okay, and two, what you can do between now and in your meetings to respond to that.
So one thing I want to say is that, we're hearing some of the feedback from you all today. So I do want to make it clear is that we don't hear the same kind of feedback from everybody. And that's not to say that everybody is not thinking like the people here this evening. But what the research has shown is that distraction, or having any kind of distraction, to any type of intruder, is something that can take them off balance. Even if it was a snapping your fingers. I mean, I'm just saying, any kind of distraction, if you're intended to do something, can take you off of what you were intending to do. And that really is the purpose of the distraction component of Alice. I was able to go through the training as well, just to get an idea of what that training was like. I have to say that these are very innovative approaches, very different. It's a very different approach than what I know I was accustomed to doing when I was growing up. But what I do trust in is that the research is saying that this could save a life. And that it could give you even a few minutes or a few seconds makes a difference in a very serious situation like that. None of us know how we're going to react if we're ever put in a situation like that, right? So we could have all the training in the world, and there are different types of reactors when you're in a very traumatic situation. Some of us may have had all the training and we intend to do something, and in that moment we do nothing, right? But the goal is to give people, and as well as our students, and that's our students and our staff, just some practice opportunities so that they can, in a moment, at least have something that they have been taught or something they have been told that might work in a particular situation. When we're talking about an actual active shooter, we're thinking that, and which I hate to even think about that scenario, but when you're thinking about an active shooter, you're thinking about somebody who has a weapon that can harm you. And anything at that moment, you're going to do anything you can do. You want to try to do anything you can, and that is something that we unfortunately want our children to know, that if you were ever in a situation, you do anything you can to try to either distract or get away from that situation. So we are going to revisit this. I know we have a committee meeting that's coming up in a couple of weeks, and we will be able to take this information back to our team. But the intent really was to share with our students as well as our staff members that distractions could give seconds or minutes, right? That's really all it can give. It's not a guarantee. It's not anything. We're not promising that if you do it this way, this is going to, save everybody in that particular situation. But it's just giving you a skill and a strategy. And there is a purpose behind that. But we will share this with our team.
Okay, may I just follow up on that comment just directly? I went through the training too. I'm grateful that they allowed me as a parent to sit through the training with the teachers. And I can see how it can work
what we were trying to do is make it applicable for our kids, because in a school, it's a different situation. Typically, if there's an intruder that's coming into a classroom, the only adult is the teacher. And you have, in some cases, 20 to 24 kids in a classroom that can also help. So, you have to think of which, and like I said, I hate having to say, well, we have to prepare for the worst, but you have to think of if there were an active shooter in a classroom and their intent, especially with some type of semi-automatic or something, that can shoot an entire classroom in 15 seconds, right? You're going to try to do everything you can to distract that situation. And if we think of that moment of if someone was in that situation, you're going to want them to do everything that they can. Just do everything that you can. A teacher's not going to be able to do everything that they can for 25 people in a room. So you have to find ways to, to strategize and to provide just these skills. It doesn't mean that, this is an end-all be-all, but it's trying to just give some strategies for young people to be able to use. And but I do think that we need to, to go back and to have some discussions with, some of our teachers on how those training sessions went, how were the discussions going, and those types of things. Just a follow-up on what the curriculum and the implementation was like, and use some of the information that we're getting back from our parents as well as to what their kids were saying. I can say that my son, he's in 4th grade, and he did, because I asked the same questions when I hear some of these things from our families. I'm fortunate enough that I can ask my own kids how their situation was. He did share with me about the distractors. And he also talked to me about, if he had to evacuate the building and go to a safe place and all those other things. He attends Lyles Crouch Elementary School. And, he did, what I took that as a moment, and I'm just speaking for me, I'm not speaking for any other parent here, but I took that as a moment for me to have a discussion with my child and, our son and our daughter about, what we want them to try to do and what we think is appropriate, because sometimes this might happen somewhere else. So we have discussions about what will we do if we're at the movie theater? What do we do if we're at the mall? What do we do if we're walking down the street to the car? Or we're at the gas station? We try to have, different scenarios, which I hate having to do with our kids, but if it's just to make them think if they're ever in that situation, it might help them if they're ever in that situation. But we will, I promise you that we will take this information back, and we do meet and revisit the curriculum and have discussions around the impact that this has happened on some of our kids and some of our families.
Quick announcement, the child care providers are leaving, so if your children are over there, you might want to pick them up. Maybe. Safety, right? How does the police department work to restore trust and build relationships with marginalized communities affected by police brutality on a school system level?
Well, let me back up and try to do it in a broader sense and bring it back down. When I got here in January of 17, we adopted the 21st Century Policing Initiative, which consists of 6 pillars. 5 of the 6 pillars deal with developing relationships and respect between the police department and the community it serves. There's a number of recommendations in there. The 6th one deals with officer wellness. In other words, you want a cop that's out there that is mentally and physically well so they can do the job properly. There's a number of recommendations in that plan, and I invite you to take a look at our website. We have a plan that we put together that addresses all those issues except for the one, which is really a financial issue for us, and that's the body-worn cameras. Body-worn cameras, as we found in some of the other communities that are doing it, is very expensive, but not so much the cameras, it's the data storage, and it's the people that have to manage the FOIA requests and the discovery motions and everything else, and that involves, of course, the Commonwealth Attorney and the City Attorney, not so much for us in that respect. Nonetheless, the police department is more than willing to do body-worn cameras. The question is, do we want to, or can we spend the money to do I invite you to take a look at our plan, and you'll also know I also created an advisory team of community members who give me information on the data that we do. We present data, for example, on our traffic citations. We've done that now for 3 years, and our traffic stops, so you can see what we do in that respect. That's a hot button issue for some. We are also very heavily engaged in a lot of our communities, especially now we're focusing in on the West End, where we have residents from a lot of different ethnic backgrounds, many of which live in the same complex. I don't know how many of you have actually done what we call vertical patrol, going into a large multi-story complex. Start at the top, because we're cops, we take the elevator to the top, the fire guys carry it up, we don't. We go to the top and we walk down. There are communities within communities in those buildings. And we've identified a number of them, and we're reaching out to them. The police department is an ongoing effort to try and develop that. And it could be gone in this business very quickly because it's a very messy business at times. But we're spending an awful lot of time and energy in that. We're actually capturing data now on how many times our officers engage in community involvement. And it's not just flipping hot dogs or burgers. It's when they're actually working out there, talking to people and establishing relationships. I'm committed to doing it. Our officers are committed to doing it. And again, I would invite you to take a look at our website for all that information on the way we're getting that done. That applies whether it's in an apartment complex or here at ACPS. It's the way we're going to do business in the city.
Okay, we'll do one more question. Do teachers have an anonymous tip line to voice concerns about discipline and safety policies?
You ought to see this up.
He's our safety guy, right? Yes, we do. So we do. We actually do have an anonymous tip line for not only our staff, but also for our students. We want people to inform us. If you see something, that you say something. And it's important for us, not only just our students, but also our staff members to know that, you know, a safe learning environment is not just for the kids, it's also for them. We have adults who are working here every single day, and they have families they want to make it home to as well on a daily basis. So the safety precautions that we take are not just for our kids, but also for all of the adults who are part of Alexandria City Public Schools.
Well, I think that concludes our evening. We will hand over all the questions to ACPS, so you all can do what you'd like with those, maybe post them, the answers. Thank you all for attending. I think it's been a really informative evening. I hope you found that as well. I'm hoping that PTAC can do a spring forum addressing mental health and wellness issues. So keep your eyes peeled for that. Thank you to all of our wonderful speakers. I really appreciate you coming out tonight and doing such a fabulous job. So thank you.